New ACC member, SMU knocking on the door, trying to avoid the upset at Nevada. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here on a Saturday night. And as I posted on X just a few minutes ago, this is tradition, folks, here at the Voice of College Football, the place to be on a Saturday night throughout the college football season. So here we start late August. We will finish it out late January, Saturday nights with the Voice of College Football each and every week. And even though the schedule, the slate is slim, it is exciting. This is awesome. Look at how we've started the college football season. We're looking at SMU, new entry to the ACC, driving. They may have scored by now at the point that I just shut it off. They had driven inside the 10-yard line. And of course, they're trying to make it a one-score game in Nevada and avoid the upset, avoid the embarrassment of falling to what is pretty obviously an improved Nevada football team under new head coach Jeff Choate, who left Montana State to take over the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack. Neil Campbell, where are you? You're probably sweating bullets to a certain extent, but in a good way, because you probably didn't expect this as a 27-point dog that Nevada could pull off the second huge upset of the day. And this is where I need to get things set up and formatted here at the Voice of College Football on the set for next week, because I don't have an outlet other than my phone to keep track of this ball game. So I will probably pull it up here. We have left the live link, the call-in link on X. I do not believe we have left it there for all of you to call the show, but we are keeping our eye on a possible upset at Nevada with Wolfpack leading. Don't know if SMU has scored at this point, but please call the show. I will run down, of course, my thoughts as we make our way through the night. How long we're going to be here, I don't know. It all depends on the response from all of you and how long you guys want to stick around. All right, again, keep me updated, Nevada and SMU. I did not expect this. Of course, it's a 27-point situation, according to Vegas. So nobody's expecting that. Did I just hear the announcer say that it's 52 degrees? Does that happen in August anywhere? Nevada has such strange weather. 52 degrees in August. Okay. I would like it to be a little bit cooler right now, but nowhere close to 52 degrees. But this is crazy. Could be our second major upset of the day. If you heard me earlier this week, I had counted up the number of upsets, and I got to say I'm fairly proud of the video we posted on Wednesday or Thursday outlining the possible upset points for Georgia Tech. What would be the key points to a Georgia Tech upset? I basically scripted today's game. I said, first and foremost, we've got DJ Uiagalelei playing his first game with Florida State. So, and he's playing with not just receivers he has not played with before, except practice, but he's playing with young receivers, and Florida State has lost all that production at the wide receiver position. That could be an issue. They may not be on the same page. Plus, just DJ himself is not a great quarterback. He's a pedestrian quarterback. So that was my point number one. My point number two is Georgia Tech's offensive line is excellent. It's a top 10 to 15 unit in the nation. They ran for 190 yards at 5.3 per carry, coming off a season in which they led the ACC in rushing. They averaged 223 yards rushing per game last year. The Georgia Tech defensive line, awful last year. The rush defense, awful. However, they added transfers from Penn State, Miami, and most notably Romello Height from USC. They were much improved today. They held FSU to 31 carries, 98 yards. I talked about Haynes King being a playmaker. No, he didn't throw for 500 yards. He threw for 146, but he made plays, and he avoided the rush. Made plays with his feet. He's an excellent dual threat quarterback. And I said, if he could keep the ball out of harm's way, of course, he threw 16 interceptions last year, then that would be key. And My last point was Aiden Burr, the Georgia Tech field goal kicker, was 17 of 19 last year. And if they need a game winner, 17 of 19. I scripted it right there. All right. So we'll dive into that. Couple notes before we start taking our calls right here. We've got Adam in tow here, ready to go. But before we get to Adam, our first caller, we did a little research here. Our research department, that would be me. I'm the research department. We'll add Jackson in as well. He does a remarkable job as a researcher here at the Voice of College Football. But today it was me as the researcher. Let's keep in mind the last time. Now via ESPN, this one is via ESPN. So I will credit them, but it's pretty much easy to see. Georgia Tech, that is their first top 10 win since 2015 against Florida State, and the crazy finish, of course, with the blocked field goal return for a touchdown. So that's that. But I did the work on my own on this one. I went through every ACC champion to see the last time an ACC champion lost its first conference game. 1998 Florida State lost to Torrey Holt and North Carolina State 24-7. In 1998, they went on to win the ACC at 7-1 and went to the BCS championship game. I also dug up this week. There were 18 double-digit upsets involving power conference teams. 18 last year. We may have 2 in week 0. Before we even play week 1, we may have 2. All right, Adam's on the line. Adam, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
All right, great to talk to you. I'll just be very brief. So, Ohio State opens up with Akron. Alabama opens up with Western Kentucky. Tennessee opens up with Chattanooga. Michigan opens up with Fresno State. And Oregon opens up with Idaho. Yet Florida State thought it would be a good idea to fly their team to Ireland to play a respectable Georgia Tech team. I think that was a terrible mistake because you're taking these kids out of the United States into Europe, and they may have never even been there. How are they going to adjust to the difference? Okay, how are they going to react to that? It's a terrible risk, and it put FSU in a terrible position. And I think it was a horrible decision by their SID. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So those points I agree with. However, it's easy to make that claim after they lost the game.
Right.
So that's one thing to keep in mind. Of course, we are playing Monday morning quarterback as an AD, at least. No, they're all valid points. Florida State is obviously, whether the network has pushed this, meaning the network that they've been affiliated with, ESPN, the ACC, has pushed them to play more of these kind of games than anybody else in the conference. They are playing the Monday night game. Now, this has nothing to do with what you're talking about taking a team across the Atlantic Ocean and playing overseas. But in terms of looking for these opportunities to play exclusive games with no competition and putting your product and your program out there for everyone to see, Florida State has been the king of that. They have played 7 or 8 consecutive years on a standalone game with no competition, either a Sunday night game or a Monday night game. And they're actually playing their week 1 game as the Labor Day game that's featured on Monday night against Boston College. So they're doing it again the last 2 years against LSU, an Alabama game, a Virginia Tech game, a Notre Dame game. They've always put themselves out there. So I don't know if that's the ACC pushing that as them being the most popular brand, or that they've said, hey, we want to be featured in these kind of games because it's great marketing. It is at that, but we've seen, I'm trying to think who else beside 3 years ago, 3 years ago was the Nebraska debacle out there as a 2-touchdown favorite against Northwestern. Right. And so we saw another underdog pull that game out. I don't think there was a week 0 game in Ireland last year, but I think those are legitimate questions to be made. Why put your team at risk in a situation in which they are the prohibitive favorite, and in just an odd setting It was like 60 degrees out. Not that it shouldn't affect a football game, but yeah, I think I don't blame the loss on that, but that's maybe not the best. So you're weighing again the marketing aspect, putting your program out there. Anybody who watched college football today is watching Florida State. Now they're watching them in a bad light.
Yeah, I kind of think the best marketing is winning national championships. And I know Georgia Tech had to fly to Ireland too, but Florida State was the number 10 team in the country. So the pressure was on them. Georgia Tech had nothing to lose. And I just think it was a mistake from a scheduling standpoint. My last question for you is, do you have any thoughts on the LSU-USC game and who you think is going to come out on top in that?
Well, unfortunately, the odds makers must be thinking the same thing I am, because that point spread was at 7. I saw 4.5 today. It's shrinking because I really wanted to jump on USC with the points, and now the points aren't as substantial. I think LSU is slightly overrated. I do believe that they are, because what I see is a team that had Superman playing quarterback. And the difference that USC had with a similar player was USC had a more formidable ground game coming from the running back position.
Right.
LSU had a 1,200-yard rusher at quarterback. He's gone, who scored 50 touchdowns, accounted for 50 touchdowns last year. They lost 2 first-round NFL receivers. The offensive line's back. This LSU team, from a personnel standpoint, isn't nearly as good as the typical LSU team. I think there's a lot of trust in Brian Kelly, and he's pretty much, to use a golf term, hit par the first 2 seasons. He's not over exceeded expectations, but he's not underachieved. He's hit pretty much what you would expect. And I'm starting to warm up to possibly pulling the trigger on USC winning this game.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, I'm a USC alum. I'm still predicting 45-34 LSU, but again, I hope you're right. Thanks so much for taking my call, Mark. Great to talk to you as always.
Good to see you, Adam, as always.
Too. Thank you.
And the one point on Adam's side in regards to his slight pessimism in looking for a USC win is, of course, this LSU offensive line just mauling the USC front. Bear Alexander is one guy, and I know that USC has fortified its defensive front to a certain extent, but against one of the best offensive lines in the country, that's where it all starts. The 2 quarterbacks are extremely similar. They're in similar situations. They have similar experience, basically one game, although Garrett Nussmeier played in more meaningful snaps other than that one postseason game. They both lit it up in the postseason game, were extremely impressive. Their scouting, their the expectation of what kind of player they would be in college was pretty similar in terms of their scouting report coming out of high school. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. We've got Chiefs on the line. Okay. We will do much better than that. So kind of wary of that. I don't know if Chief is sitting back and it's an honest call, but we can do without the beats tonight. All right, we've got Bubba's joining us tonight. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Hello, Bubba. You there, Bubba? Going once, going twice. 2 straight callers. Didn't want to talk to me. Porter's on the line. Porter, welcome to the show tonight.
I'm kind of like a Bubba.
We can give you that. I can see that. You sound like that. Like if this was your first ever phone call here to the Voice of College Football and you called yourself Bubba, I would believe it. I'd be okay with that. Sure.
Yeah. That's okay. I've been called worse. So, I didn't get your take on the game, but man, what a great game earlier today. Congrats to Tech, which is hard for me to say, being a Georgia alum. But what was your take on that game?
Well, here's my take, and I don't want to be too repetitive, but I'm going to go back to my take on Wednesday or Thursday when I posted my preview, because if I have this type of, not that I picked Georgia Tech to win, I came very close to picking the upset, but I didn't. But I grabbed the points for sure. I said, take the points. We gave the one freebie pick for everyone today, and you should have taken it, everyone. I said, take Georgia Tech and the points. But I pretty much nailed this game. And again, if I could carry this for the next 250 college football games, boy, I'm going to make a lot of people rich. Because I said, number one, DJ is playing his first game at Florida State, and the Florida State wide receiver core is completely vacated, and we've got new players. They're highly talented, highly recruited. However, not only have they not played with him, they've not played college football. They're extremely inexperienced. Not like they haven't played at all. Ja'Kai Douglas probably had the most experience coming into this game, but they might be off in game one. That was my thought. But as it turned out, I think I was correct, but I'm not going to claim being 100% correct. It was just simply DJ wasn't looking downfield most of the time. So that's point number one. And number two, just DJ as an extended point on that, just I don't have a ton of confidence in him. I don't think he's horrible. I don't want to pile on him, but do I want him quarterbacking my team? No, I just have never thought he was that good. Ever since the two games he filled in for Trevor Lawrence, those are the two best games he's ever played in his career, were the first two games he ever played against Notre Dame and Boston College. So that was point number one, was basically DJ and the wide receivers. Point number two was that Georgia Tech's offensive line, I don't think many people knew this, but again, I talked about this last week, have an excellent offensive line. And they were number one in the ACC in rushing last year. They have their 1,100-yard back, Jamal Haynes, back this season. And so I thought, well, the two best defensive line for Florida State, Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, 2 first-rounders, they're gone. Maybe Georgia Tech can control the ball. And there were only 14 total possessions in this game, 7 per side. And that's exactly what Georgia Tech was able to do. Now, the one point that I wasn't necessarily confident in, but I thought it had a chance of coming through, is that Georgia Tech's rush defense last year was awful. However, picked up a Penn State defensive lineman, a Miami defensive lineman, and most notably, Romello Height from USC, who's a really good player on the edge. That obviously helped. They only gave up 98 yards on the ground. And then finally, Haynes King, if he could keep the ball from harm's way, threw 16 interceptions last year. I have always liked him. He's a baller. And I guess finally, on top of that would be their field goal kicker was 17 of 19. So I said it right here on the video. That was my closing point. Got a field goal kicker in Aiden Burr, who hit 17 of 19 last year. Maybe he kicks a game winner.
Oh, wow. How about that? Well, yeah, I mean, you're spot on. And I guess the thing I don't understand, part of the problem with our sport is there's so many people out there that just have lazy takes. And obviously that's not you, but I guess when you saw how FSU, after that fateful day in December when they didn't make the playoff, which I thought they deserved to get in. I thought it was ridiculous that they didn't get in. But when you saw that team, when you saw all the people leave the team and not want to play in the Orange Bowl, and just this just amazing turnover that they had, when you have that, I don't understand why everybody was just anointing them as a top 10 team. I mean, they had so much turnover from last year. And not only that, the coaches never really, when you see a team, and again, I guess I'm just so used to Kirby Smart and the culture that he's developed at Georgia, but when you see a team like that just not want to play in their bowl game, to me that says something about the culture of that program and the way they just didn't show up and got beat so bad. And I mean, and we had a bunch of first and second rounders that decided to play in that game. So I think that says a lot about our culture. But the fact that all those kids just didn't want to play in the bowl game, they left the program. I just don't think they have a great culture at FSU, and he's not been able to develop that. And so when I saw that, plus I saw that Tech was such a, the latter part of last year, Tech was a hard out last year. I mean, they were tough to beat towards the end of last year. I mean, they had when we played them, they were, when I say was not we, when Georgia played them, I hate when people say we, their team.
You do?
But,
we'll have to discuss that sometime, Porter.
Yeah, I'm not out there playing. I'm just an alum of the.
I understand, but if you don't exist, they don't exist.
Yeah, I know. I just don't like.
They don't exist. If you don't exist, they don't exist.
I know. I don't like saying we. Because I'm
Okay.
not out. Anyway, when Georgia played them, I mean, granted, we made a dumb mistake. They were up by 16 going into the fourth quarter, and probably one of the worst decisions that Carson Beck made last year is he tried to force one in the end zone. He could have easily just sat on the ball and kicked a field goal. We would have been up by 19, and then it would have been over. But anyway, we allowed them back in the game and all that. So anyway, they played Georgia pretty tough last year, and they played obviously they beat North Carolina last year late. They beat Miami late in the year. They I don't know. They were just a tough out last year, and they kept getting better and better and better, and had a really good bowl game. So I don't really understand these people that just were like, well, Florida State's going to just smoke them. I'm thinking, what are you looking at? And I don't know. I think that's part of the problem with our sport, just how lazy people are when it comes to some of their takes. It's just anointing a program like Florida State that had one really good year and just say that they the next year would be just as good or slightly less as good than they were this past year. I don't know. I don't understand it, especially when they had so much turnover. So
yeah, as I considered Georgia Tech's run down the stretch, they had 2 games in which they were a double-digit underdog. That's another point that I made in this video. There were 18 double-digit underdog wins, and shoot, we could have another one tonight. That would be 2 already before we make it to week 1. And there were 18 involving power conference teams, and Georgia Tech pulled off 2 of them. One against Miami as a 3-touchdown dog, and one against North Carolina as an 11-point dog. They won 4 of their final 6. They beat North Carolina. They beat Virginia, who's not a good team, but they beat them by 4 touchdowns. They had a down game against Clemson, although I'm not going to say it was competitive. They lost by 3 touchdowns, but I watched quite a bit of that game, and they were in it for a while. They beat Syracuse, played the respectable game against Georgia, were down by 2 touchdowns in the bowl game, and came back and beat UCF. I do think that one of the big issues in our sport and trying to predict from season to season is just, even before the transfer portal, was that these teams are more different than, let's say, professional teams from year to year. And now we got the transfer portal. So just trying to gauge these teams from year to year is kind of difficult. And yeah, most people are lazy and they're going to default to the Florida State brand.
Well, I mean, is it really that great of a brand? I mean, I know they were really good in the 90s. They had some, they kind of fell off in the early to mid 2000s when Ricks and Bobby Bowden, kind of his latter part of his his tenure there. I mean, they're getting blown out by Wake Forest by like 38 at home. I mean, in the mid to late 2000s, and then they have a couple of really good seasons under Jimbo, but Florida State is not. I mean, they are. I know when they were shopping for a conference, as an alum of an SEC school, I didn't want them in the SEC. I mean, they don't bring anything. They're a very good program. They got a good tradition and history, but so does 8 or 9 of the current SEC. I don't know really what they bring, and then when you see FSU treat their administration or the ACC administration the way they have, when you see the way they did all these investigations, and I mean, it just it's one of those things. It's like, why would you want that in your conference? I mean, it's like a guy who, is suddenly out on the dating market, and suddenly a wife is, or a woman is cheating on her husband, and then suddenly is interested in you. It's like, why would you want that? Why would you why would you want to be interested in somebody that treats their current situation the way they treated the ACC? I mean, they did it such a classless way. I sure as heck didn't want them in the SEC. If they want to go to the Big Ten, that's fine. But now they've lost this game. They've gotten beat, the last two games by teams from Georgia, and I think they think more highly of themselves than they really are.
You might be right on that. I will say this on the personal note in regards to, and we'll just stay on that very briefly. People think that, men in particular, because they always think that they're different, that they are going to be different, that is genuine. So we'll move that to the side. But taking your analogy to the football field, well, the reason Florida State would not treat the SEC and the Big Ten like that is because they would be overjoyed and just thankful and be thanking their lucky stars that they could play in a league like that. I'm not saying that their ethics would be any different. You make a good point. And actually the point that you are making, and I don't necessarily agree with you, not because I disagree with you, but because I just don't know. But I will just say that there are two sides to this. And the one that you're stating was actually backed up in this latest Brett McMurphy article, in which apparently McMurphy, and we've got to trust him that his sources are, he's stating exactly what he discovered. And that's in speaking to more than one, it sounded like 3 or 4 presidents from the SEC and the Big Ten, that they stated just what you said. Why would we want to take in a partner that is treating its current league this way? Why would we want to deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's true about it. It's true. You can make so many analogies in life. It's the same thing, if you're working for somebody and you're treating your boss terribly, it's the same kind of thing. People don't realize that there are consequences to the way they treat people in every walk of life, whether it's romantic relationships, professional relationships, whatever. You cannot treat people like that and expect that not to come back and haunt you. So, that was my whole thing with FSU. Is just this kind of arrogance that they had when they really didn't have the. Granted, they had a wonderful history in the 90s. They were such an impressive program in the 90s. Believe me, I lived through it. Unfortunately, I had to live in Southwest Georgia when I had to deal with a lot of Florida State fans down that way. That they were just bandwagon Georgians that just had to root for a team that was good and all this other stuff. So I don't. I will say this from a personal standpoint. I don't like FSU mainly because I had to live in Southwest Georgia in the 90s. I lived like 40 minutes from Tallahassee, and we had so many bandwagon fans that I had to deal with that had no loyalty to their state. So anyway, now that it's not that way anymore, I'm loving it. So I do not like Florida State, but I also do not like Florida State by the way they have acted in the courtroom and everywhere else. So it was hard for me to watch that game today because I don't like Georgia Tech, obviously, but I have a lot of animus towards Florida State too. So I guess I should go ahead.
Well, so to be fair on the Florida State side, and hopefully we will, through discovery, find out a lot of this, that their claim is not just that the ACC was incompetent. It's one thing to be incompetent, but they claim that they were actually corrupt in colluding with ESPN, and that whole situation was bungled from the start in regards to the not just see on the surface. Obviously, the claim against Florida State is you had free right to sign the grant of rights and then actually re-sign it just about 5 or 6 years ago. So you've had 2 opportunities to deny playing under this contract that you're now trying to get under, however, or out of. But the flip side of that is that they are claiming Florida State some unscrupulous activity from the ACC and ESPN that hopefully we will find out.
Yeah. Well, it's it's a tough situation. For people that are genuinely good FSU people, I hate that they're going through this, but it's anyway. I just don't want to get bogged down in just discussing that. But I guess I'll leave you with this. I'm not gonna. I mean, on this subject, I'll leave you with this one, and it's what I tell FSU fans all the time: is you've won 3 national championships in your history, and every single national championship that you won was as a member of the ACC. So tell me how the ACC has been so bad for you. And they always go, well, they start getting into the money and the future and all this other stuff. The fact is, they never won a national championship before they were a member of the ACC. And yet but
they only have had the program that they've had since roughly 1980. So they only played as a nationally prominent program for about 12 years before they joined the ACC.
Yep. That's about right. Yeah, I think the 78 Orange Bowl was really their first time they really did something. They got beat by the Sooners pretty badly.
Yeah, 79 and 80 teams went to the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma.
Yeah. So what did you think of the picks on are you a game day guy? Do you watch game day?
What's funny is I was over at a buddy's house and we caught the last he already had it on when I walked in. I walked in about 5 minutes before kickoff and we took in the conference picks, and he made the comment to me. He goes, man, I haven't watched this show in years. And I said, I haven't watched this show in like 20 years. I know this doesn't sound consistent, but I assume it's still a quality show because I respect just about everyone on the set. I don't know anything about Pat McAfee. I've never really seen him talk about anything except for a couple segments of complete nonsense, but he's an entertainer. But I have great respect for Reese Davis, Kirk Herbstreit. They were much better with David Pollack up there for sure. He got railroaded. That was another pathetic move by ESPN. But I'm trying to think. Oh, Desmond Howard's a complete and utter joke. He's pathetic. But other than that, and obviously the production staff and everything that they do at ESPN's first rate. But yeah, it was just kind of funny that you would bring that up because we just said, yeah, we haven't watched this in forever. But we caught the conference predictions and the national championship selections. That was just a Georgia-Oregon fest, basically. That's what they all picked, didn't they? I think they all picked some version of Georgia over Oregon or Oregon over Georgia.
On the national championship, I was surprised that Nick Saban had Georgia for national champion. I was just, I don't know. That really surprised me. But I think Saban is just like he. I mean, I'm not a Saban fan, but I mean, he just like on the NFL draft, that guy's good. He's really good in front of the camera. I have to admit it.
He is.
He is. He's smart. He's concise at what he says. He knows the players. I'm really amazed at how well he knows all the different teams. So it was very, he's good. I think he's going to be a good addition to I like game day. I know SEC Network has their own show, and I know obviously Fox has their own show, but I don't know. I'm just more of a traditionalist. I like game day. Part of it is, the old, I just like the stories. I like the fact that, from kind of a, American, apple pie kind of thing. I just feel like this is the people that are on there. This is like one of the great things about America is just the people that are featured and I don't know, it's just a good all-American show. And I know, different things about it people don't like, but I don't know. Overall, there's just something about waking up and turning it on at 9 o'clock and having coffee with my wife and watching it. I love doing it. It's just what we do this part of this part of the year. And I just really like it. So,
I don't disagree with you. Again, I'm making a big assumption here, but I assume it's still a great show. And that's exactly what I did for years and years and years. I had to watch game day. I just, part of it's doing what I'm doing here. But even before I was doing this, I got out of the habit of watching game day. I guess I just figured either I knew I was going to be watching football from noon until like 2 o'clock in the morning, or because of significant others and family, kids, that I would be trying to watch as much football as possible, but I'd be dragged away to do X, Y, and Z. So I might as well invest in other things in the morning, and then that might buy me some more football on the field later.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's one of the things that surprised me about the show is, and maybe they're waiting for later in the year, there really wasn't a lot of talk about Ohio State on the show this morning. I was surprised. What is your take on the quarterback situation at Ohio State? By the way, who ended up getting who's behind the transfer from Kansas State?
Who's behind him is the number 2 guy?
Who's the number 2 guy?
Well, it's probably going to be Devin Brown. That's the guy who it is right now, although Ryan Day said that that's going to continue to be a fluid situation with he and Julian Sayin, the Alabama transfer, who never played for Alabama, just a 5-star.
I haven't had a chance to watch your videos on Ohio State, but what is your, I mean, do you feel good about the quarterback situation there in terms of the starter? No. I mean, or do you?
No, and I still picked them to win the national championship. I changed my mind very late in the process. I was going to pick, and well, it was going to matter it was going to be determined somewhat by the seedings, because sometimes you can have seedings. Like, I think Ohio State and Georgia are the 2 best teams in the country and should be playing for a national championship, but I have them hitting each other in the semifinals. So obviously somebody's got to lose that game. But I pulled the trigger. I keep saying that Will Howard's like the 25th or 30 best quarterback in the country. I think he's better than that. But no, I don't feel great about Will Howard being the quarterback at Ohio State this year to win a national championship, because if they had CJ Stroud or Justin Fields as the starting quarterback, man, I'm not saying that it would be a slam dunk that they would be the national champions by any stretch, because Georgia's loaded, but I would feel much more confident. So Will Howard can be the 20th best quarterback in the country for Ohio State to win the Big Ten and get into the playoff, win a game, probably win a second game, but he better be a top 3 or 5 quarterback in the semifinals and in the championship game, or they're not winning a national championship.
Yeah, it's one thing I'm trying to remember. I watched that Sugar Bowl when they played Alabama after they won the Big 12. Do you recall? Did he have a good game against Bama?
Are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about.
Howard?
Oh,
yeah, Will Howard.
When you said, okay, never mind. Anyway, my mind went somewhere else because I thought you were on Ohio State. I'm thinking that Bama playoff game in the Sugar Bowl against Ohio State. Okay, yeah, just a couple of years ago, Will Howard. I know they played really well to start the game. They jumped on Bama in the first 5 minutes, and then they just got steamrolled. I don't remember much about that game other than Bama was way too good for them.
Yeah, I kind of remember. Bama kind of swamped them, kind of starting in the second quarter. They had this.
Yeah.
I remember Kansas State had like a short little running back that took it far. It had a long run or something like that. Then after that,
for the Dallas Cowboys, I can't remember his name. This is what's terrible. Number 22. Yeah, the short little running back who is just a jitterbug.
The reason why I was asked that question is I just wonder how he played against competition like that. Obviously, they beat TCU, which is a really good win because TCU went to the finals that year. But I don't know. We'll see. I think what's going to. I mean, the kid from Buford, here, the defensive back they got from Bama. I mean, he is just unbelievable. And he's only the one that Ohio State got, the safety. He is. Not only is he so athletic, he's so smart. I mean, I think his dad played the NFL, and Downs is his name. I mean, he is. Yeah, I think when you get players like that on your defense, I think Ohio State's going to have a lights out defense.
Oh, yes, they should. They should have the best defense in the Big Ten. They should. So what separates them from Iowa and Michigan is they just have more elite talent. But that doesn't mean they're going to be sound. But they should have the best defense in the Big Ten, if not the country.
Yeah. Well, Mark, it's good talking to you. Have a good. I'm sorry, real quick. I loved what you did last year. You did like I don't know if you did it. Did you do a Friday to Saturday show, like where you did like to start the season? You were like on for all night or something like that. Yeah. I mean, that was really.
What I did was, let's see, 3 consecutive years I've been on for 24 straight hours.
Yeah.
So what I did originally was I made it really hard on myself, and I started thinking that after the games we would want to be on until about 2 a.m. I started the live stream at 2 a.m. Well, that's stupid because I was up all day already. So I started the live stream at 2 a.m. and we went all day Thursday and after the game, and then boom, ended at 2. Now last year I got a little bit smarter and I started at 5 a.m. Got a night's sleep, started at 5 a.m, went all day through the games, and then took it until 5 a.m. after the games on Thursday night.
Wow. So what's the schedule this year?
That's a great question because I'm trying to think of a incentive, because we have to remind people from time to time, we are running a business here. This isn't like I can sit here and make 13 cents an hour. So I'm trying to come up with some type of incentive plan for that, but that's a great question.
All right. Well, have a great season. Always love calling in, and thanks for having me on.
Good to hear from you, Porter. Have a good night.
Bye.
Our guy Porter chiming in. We've got a prediction coming in from Chris LeClaire. Miami to defeat Ohio State in the national championship game. Would that not be something else? Okay, maybe. I don't see it out of Miami, but maybe. If somebody outside the Big Ten or the SEC wins the national championship, I will be close to shocked. Before I take this call from DeReal, I perused a column, and I don't want to mention the guy's name. I don't even know. I know it was on the USA Today site of some team. This was the biggest piece of crap I've ever read. Well, no, it's not the biggest I've ever read. It's just the typical mindless garbage. He said something about he was picking Utah to be a top 4 seed and talked about what a shock that would be. And I'm like, do you understand the format of this? They're the odds-on favorite to win the Big 12. They have the easiest record in the conference. They are supposed to win the Big 12. They would be an automatic top 4 seed. It would not be a shock to anyone. Okay, we got to No. Let's get these super chats in. We appreciate it's been a while for this one. NCIS Fanatic. Have not heard from you in a long time. Appreciate you stopping by. Shaping up to be another 2007 season. Yeah, 07 was crazy. Of course, we all know that. We will not document it right here. But when you go back and look at the results and how everything played out, you know what should have been just as crazy. But of course, we had a system in the BCS in which everybody was brainwashed that whatever the computers and the AP writers selected was the way it should have been. You look at 2008, it should have been just as much of a logjam. Texas, USC, etc. And then we've got Adam. Thank you so much for your contribution. This guy is phenomenal. Mark, when I run for Congress, I respectfully request your vote, and I think Notre Dame may win it all this year. I gave some slight consideration to Notre Dame. All I'm seeing out there basically is Georgia is getting the most love as a national champion, and I thought until I saw game day this morning, Ohio State was right there, because that's all I've seen is Georgia, Ohio State everywhere, but I saw a lot of Oregon, and I'm starting to see some buzz for Oregon. Is Dylan Gabriel that good? Like, I think we've had a weak quarterback class. It's deep with good players, but it's weak at the top. It is not elite. when Dillon Gabriel is considered the second best quarterback in college football? Okay. I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying that the quarterback class is weak if Dillon Gabriel is the second best quarterback in college football as listed by Pro Football Focus and others. DeReal MVP's here. DeReal, what's going on?
It's a beautiful and great day, Mark. How about you?
We've got our resident Florida State fan here.
Oh, yeah, Mark. Resident truth teller is how I like to describe myself. But, Mark, Florida State's elitist, arrogant attitude cost them this game. You know, and maybe instead of 8 months going to court, whining, complaining, tweeting, saying how you're a victim, maybe if you prepared and had strength and conditioning throughout the offseason, maybe you wouldn't have had the herd run on you, Mark. I mean, my goodness. Did you see some of those lanes Georgia Tech had on Florida State? You could have put a semi-truck through some of those lanes. That's embarrassing for Florida State. Pete Thamel, I've heard him say, or I've seen people reference him saying Florida State had the best defensive line in the country. Come on, Mark. Come on. Florida State is a soft program. They are now the softest program in all of college football, surpassing Ohio State.
Ohio State can afford to be a little softer than Florida State. They've got a lot more talent. But, yeah, I heard that not directly from the Pete Thamel article or post on X, but from our buddy George, who did the post game. Give it up for George. He delivered here on our channel right here, the Florida State post game after the game. So give it up for George. He took some abuse on there. I caught a little bit of it. But, yeah, he had told me this past week, George, that Pete Thamel was ranking Florida State as the best defensive line in the country. Now, I didn't challenge it here. Sometimes I have a little courtesy toward my guests. That wasn't the discussion, so I just let that slide. But I thought, what? They just lost 2 first-round picks, and they didn't have the best defensive line in the country.
Right. Well, your buddy is in a coke spiral during the show saying, oh, you know, Florida State, they're like Ohio State when they lost to Virginia Tech and went on to win the national championship. Now, he said multiple times, I'm not saying it, but he referenced it like 2 or 3 or 4 times. So if you reference something enough, I think you're kind of implying that could be Florida State. Hey, Florida State's not any good. That's their problem. They're a bad football team, Mark. They'll be lucky. They are. They got ran on and dominated by Georgia Tech. I don't care what the final score was, 24-21. Georgia Tech from start to finish, outside of Florida State's first drive, was the better team. Florida State at no point during that game I thought had any chance of winning. Any chance. I can erase 14 points off Florida State score and it would be totally reasonable. You have 2 kicks of 50-plus yards or longer, 159. How often is a kicker going to make that? I doubt it's going to be much. And then you have a drive at the end of the game where you have to go for it on 4th down. You convert not 1, but 2 4th and medium to 4th and long 4th downs. What is the odds of that happening in a game?
And those were the correct calls to make, by the way. I had a few people text me that they needed to kick a field goal there. And I understand that traditional thought, but no, you got to go for it on 4th down with 5 or 6 minutes left. I'm not going to go through it right now because I don't want to break up your rant. But
no, you're good.
Georgia Tech was the better team. Yeah. So the deal there is, let me get the situation right. DJ completed a 4th and 7 and a 4th and 8. So the odds of making a 4th and 7 or 4th and 8, I'm not going to be able to slice it down to a T, but I would guess it's somewhere in the 25 to 30% range. You know, obviously, depending on if you've got Tom Brady standing back there, it's a lot different. But just generally, it's 25 to 30%. So the thought would be, well, if it's only 25 or 30%, you kick the field goal. If the field goal would get you to within 3, it's a different situation, but it only gets you to within 4. So you still have to score a touchdown. And this is assuming you make the field goal, which for the average college kicker is probably a 65 to 70% certainty. So you're already playing with fire there. Number two, you've got to get the ball back without the other team scoring, and you still have to score a touchdown. So you go for it on fourth down to score the touchdown to tie the game.
Oh, I agree with the call. I didn't even think there was any question about the call. I'm just saying the odds of you going, if your game plan week in and week out is to go for on a 4th and 8 and 4th and 7 and hit 250+ yard kicks, you're not going to be winning very many football games, especially when you're playing mediocre competition like Georgia Tech. Listen, Georgia Tech, they're a cool story, Mark. They're not going to be a threat for the college football playoff. They are probably a fringe top 25 team at best. They're not very talented. They've got a coach who should have won 5-7 last year, but people are saying is now the hottest name in all of college football. Or Carolina Jackpot saying begging for him to go to South Carolina. I mean, come on, Mark. Florida State is the main story here, and it's that they're not a good team. They are a one-year wonder, okay? And it's okay to be a one-year wonder. TCU was a one-year wonder. You just got to know your role in life sometimes, Mark. And now Florida State's going to be 7-5, 8-4. They'll be the middle of the ACC, and they'll be happy to go to the Quick Lanes Bowl or something like that, or the Pop-Tart Bowl. They're just not good this year. They're just not a good team.
I love your take. I don't necessarily completely agree with it to the extent that you do, but I love your take. It's a bold one, and it's brash, but you've talked to me for long enough here that you know that I'm a little bit more reserved in my judgment. I've got to see things repeated. So if I've got a perception that Florida State is roughly a top 15 team in the country, which is where I placed them, I had them losing the ACC Championship game, and I am so glad right now that I didn't change my mind. I just was not sold on any one team winning the ACC. I actually considered about 4 teams, and then I pulled the trigger on NC State pulling off an upset in the ACC. But I was so glad watching that game thinking, man, they're going to lose a game here. They're not winning the ACC. It's going to be, it's been some Florida State fans. It was kind of funny on X. They took solace in me posting, and this took me a while to look up because I had to go year after year after year after year. Back to 1998 was the last team in the ACC to lose its first conference game and then come back and win the conference. And they were like, well, we did it then. Well, that was 26 years ago. So it doesn't happen I'm basically showing you that this doesn't happen when you dig yourself a hole of 0-1. Now, can they pull it off? Yes, the ACC is not that good. So remember, DeReal, that they're playing in a bad conference. So they could possibly, it's like the NFL, and I know you love the NFL, that they say one of the most overrated things in the NFL is taking too much stock in what happens week 1, and you think, oh, these teams are really good, these teams are really bad, and so then everybody overplays it in week 2.
I get that, Mark, but maybe my main focus isn't on Florida State, the entire team, but it's on Jordan Travis versus DJ Ukulele. I mean, Mark, you replace a Ferrari with a Ford Fusion or a Honda Civic. I mean, it's just terrible, Mark. I mean, DJ Ukulele is not equipped to be a good or elite quarterback. He's just an average to below average quarterback. He missed plenty of easy throws down the middle of the field to get Florida State moving the football. He's just not that good. This is his 3rd program, and he hasn't improved at all since his days of Clemson.
Yeah, this is making me feel better about my lack of trust in the Pro Football Focus quarterback rankings, because when I saw that they had DJ at 17, I thought, they're supposed to know more than I do. I don't think he's that good. I think he's okay. I think he was a good fit for the likes of Oregon State. And I do think that his receivers let him down at Clemson. He didn't have the elites that Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence had. But no, he's not a really good quarterback. This has been proven. The dude's been playing since 2020. So he has played a lot of football, and he's not. Now, there was some fairy dust theories out there by Florida State fans that put him together with Mike Norvell, who knows offense, that he could suddenly make him something he's not. Well, we certainly didn't get any evidence of that. And again, I hate to really run down how I had this game pegged, but that was one of my key points. DJ's average Yeah, I'll go with that. He's average 57% completion percentage last year, and you're putting him together with players he's never thrown to in a game, and they're not experienced players. They're all mostly inexperienced players. And even George, our Florida State guy, said, well, you got a good point there. You could be right. I said, they're not going to be in sync, most likely. And the problem wasn't most of the time that they weren't in sync. It's that DJ didn't even look downfield to try to throw the ball to them.
Right, and I just don't see any of him improving at all. Like, he looks like literally the exact same quarterback from Clemson. He hasn't improved at all. And Mark, I've given Florida State some ramp, but Mark, there's another team out here who laid basically a complete egg. And now, since they're in the Power 4, I have to treat them with some respect, which is stupid. But the SMU Mustangs, Mark, what in the world happened? You almost lost to Nevada. They're one of the 5. Yeah, almost. They came back to win 29-24 because Nevada's terrible, Mark.
I missed the big comeback. I want to go back and watch that. I was hoping that Nevada was going to hang on. They got a new head coach. That would have been a nice little story, 27-point dog.
Well, this is something that doesn't make any sense to me, Mark, okay? We had 4 examples of last year where you had group of 5 teams go to the Big 12, and all of them did terrible. And all 4 of those group of 5 teams were better than the SMU Mustangs in terms of their team last year to compare to this year and their programs. They're all better. And yet people were saying the SMU Mustangs might win the ACC. How does that make any sense? People had them in the same tier as Virginia Tech, Miami, and those teams. They're lucky, Mark, if they're Boston College or Virginia. They are going to be, in my opinion, the worst team in the ACC. They're just not good. They're not, seriously, they're not talented. They're not good. They're not coached well. They're a bad team. They are going to be the Houston Cougars of the ACC.
So again, overreaction, I guess, late Saturday night. Let's not quite go there. So I was one of those people that I played with SMU a little bit. I kind of looked at them. See, one of the deals with the ACC this year is I got very familiar with the ACC because Lindy's asked me to do their ACC all-conference team. First team, second team, third team. And if you really think about that, that's 66 players. Plus, you got to go through everybody that that left last year that was all-conference. And then you got to try to fill those. You're combing through 120 players. So I got pretty familiar with the ACC, and I started to fall in love with SMU, but of course they racked up those kind of production figures against the American Conference. They lost all 3, as you mentioned, against the power conferences, but still, again, I'm not going to put too much into, we have seen the Northwesterns of the world lose to Akron and other MAC schools and then play well in the Big Ten West and win it. And there are other examples because, of course, nobody's going to say that the Big Ten West is the pinnacle of college football. But, we've seen good Kansas State teams lose to FCS schools and then turn around and become 9-3 football teams. So I'm not going to play it again to that extreme. Just again, that's one data point, and it's a bad looking one for both of the teams you're picking on tonight. I get it.
Well, it's just because I understand that, but I've had these opinions about both of these teams for a while now. I've expressed the Florida State one publicly because people care about Florida State. Nobody cares about SMU. But I'm just shocked by the amount of people who believe a G5 team could compete in a Power 4 conference. I mean, I thought the whole point of everybody making fun of the playoffs is that a G5 team can't compete with the big boys in the playoffs. And now we're having a terrible G5 team in SMU join a conference, and we're expecting them to run roughshod. Their first 2 games in the ACC is against Florida State and Louisville.
Well, they're probably going to get. They weren't as a G5. They were not terrible. They were the best G5 last year.
No, Liberty was ranked above them, but
no. Let's correct. We know that the morons who do the rankings don't know what they're talking about. SMU was a better team than Liberty last year.
Fair enough. What happened in their bowl game? They got crushed by Boston College.
Yeah. They got crushed. But yeah, they lost
a
to Boston College. They lost to a bad TCU team. Yes, a point well taken. They couldn't beat a Power 5 team last year. You're right.
and now they're playing a Power 5 schedule.
And recent history tells us that even eventual good Power 5 teams, Utah and TCU, struggled making that transition. It took them 3 or 4 years before they were any good making that transition. Yes.
Right. And I know the ACC is terrible and they play Cal and Stanford and those teams, but those teams have at least Power 4 players. You know, it's like the old saying, Mark, of people saying, could the worst NBA team lose to the best college team?
Oh.
At least the NBA team has NBA players.
Yeah.
The SMU Mustangs don't have Power 4 players. They just don't. They're not depth. They don't have enough depth to survive the season, similar to what Colorado had last year. They may get off to a good start, but they will completely collapse in the back half. I'm just completely sold out. I think they go 4-8 personally. Like, I don't think they're as good as Pitt, Wake Forest, Virginia, those types of teams. They might be lucky to beat Cal, Stanford, and those level of teams.
I've got them 5-3 in the conference, and I'm going to have to live with it. It may turn out to be ugly for me, but once you put the predictions out there, I'm glad, again, that I did not pull the trigger on Florida State. I pulled back on that one, winning the ACC, but I also am kicking myself because I had them at 9-3, and then I bumped them up to 10-2 at the last second.
I'm guessing one of those 3 losses wasn't, or 2 losses wasn't to Georgia Tech, was it?
No.
Okay.
Did not come up with
Just
that.
making
Although I came very close to pulling the trigger on that one, but couldn't quite do it. But I did shout from the rooftops to take Georgia Tech and the points.
You did, Mark. Now, has FSU sued anybody recently because for this loss of this game? Because they've sued ESPN again. Have they sued the last caller, for example? Have they sued Uncle Lou? Have they sued anybody? Because I know they love suing people. So have they sued anybody recently?
I think they got their hands full.
Okay. And I also saw, and what was interesting is when the game came on, it said the ACC brought to you by ESPN, Mark. I've been told by all these Florida State people that Florida State was going to leave the ACC. Are they still in the ACC, Mark?
They are still playing football in the ACC.
Okay. And they are going to continue playing football in the ACC this season?
They will, and I am betting next season.
Okay. And I'm going to make a prediction that they are going to continue losing football games in the ACC. What do you think about that prediction?
I think they will lose a few, but I'm going to guess that they're going to win more than they lose.
I think they can go 7-5, 8-4, Mark. I mean, that would be winning more than they lose. They'll beat up on the North Alabamas and the Citadels of the world, you know, the cupcake team, and have a good time in the Quick Lane Bowl.
All right.
Good talking to you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Jackson, forgive me. We're going to pass you by here. We got Uncle Lou. We'll talk to Uncle Lou here. What's going on tonight?
I've really enjoyed the real heel turn over the last year or so. I've been listening to him call into these shows for a long time. He's one of my favorite callers on these internet shows now.
Oh, he's one of mine too.
Yeah. Shout out to Darrell. He does a good job. You ever heard the expression, you get what you pay for?
I've heard that once or twice.
What is the ACC paying SMU this year?
Nothing.
Okay. Now I do want to cut the ACC some slack because there's a lot of this crap out there in the last couple hours that, they never should have went out and got SMU or whatever. I still think that's a good move overall for the ACC. You agree?
They got into Texas. Yes.
Yeah, right. I think it's a great move for the ACC.
And that school has so much money. Of course they have so much money. They said,
right,
screw your money. We just want to play big time college football. And we'll do anything to do it.
Yeah. All right. So that's the SMU thing out of the way. Now with Florida State, I need to know who Mike Norvell's PR guy is. Where did this idea come from that he's some kind of QB guru? Jordan Travis is just a good quarterback. He's not a good quarterback because of Mike Norvell. Where are all the quarterbacks? Mike Norvell's been at Florida State for 4 years. Where's the quarterback he signed and developed?
Well, he did a nice job at Memphis.
Okay. And didn't y'all just get done shitting on the group of 5 for 15 minutes?
Well, you can only do what you can do when that's your job. But obviously, we've seen a lot of these guys come from the group of 5, and he did a great job at Memphis.
So the answer is none. He hasn't signed and developed a single good quarterback at Florida State in 4 years.
True, because he's only played one, and that's Jordan Travis. And now
I know he only played one, Mark, but has he never signed a quarterback at Florida State? In other words, why is Ukulele the quarterback at Florida State right now? Because he never signed or developed a decent quarterback. Why did these people think that DJ was going to come in there and get turned into something he's not? Because of Mike Norvell's, he's never done that. I don't want to hear about Memphis. Y'all just got done taking a giant dump on the group of 5 as a whole. You just got done telling me and everyone else listening that what SMU did in the group of 5 doesn't matter compared to the Power 4. So why does it matter for Norvell? He doesn't know what he's doing. He has a losing season half the time. 50% losing seasons.
Well, he took over a crappy program by Florida
Okay,
State.
well, the coach at Northwestern that nobody watching can name took over a 1-win team in the Big Ten. How many games did he win last year?
8.
Okay. Did it take him 4 years to get a winning record? No. What was that today?
We really don't know if he's going to be able to maintain that.
Florida State is so much more talented than Georgia Tech, you can't measure it.
Yeah, they blew that game.
Yeah, they blew it.
They were not as inspired as the other team. They didn't call as good a game. None of that.
Yeah.
They got physically beaten.
Oh, yeah, the lines of scrimmage were – I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe it because I haven't suddenly changed my mind. I agree with DeReal. Georgia Tech's not winning 10 games. I mean, let's just look.
Well, not against their schedule either.
Yeah, I'm happy for the Georgia Tech fans. I'm not. My point isn't to crap on Georgia Tech. Like I am happy for them. They've been through the ringer for a decade, basically, since the last few years of the Paul Johnson era up through now. Like I am happy for the Georgia Tech fans. That's a big win for them. First top 10 win since. I don't know, whatever,
15,
since anybody,
16.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, I'm happy for them. Not my intention to take anything away from their win or whatever, but obviously the story is Florida State is bad, not Georgia Tech is good. This was unacceptable. I mean, I really can't believe it. I can't. I mean, now I love to see it. And so did everybody else because of the last 8 or 9 months. Florida State fan. I don't know if I've ever seen a fan base deserve to lose a game more than the Florida State. I'm not even talking about the team. I'm talking about the fans deserve this loss big time. Running around 8, 9 months, embarrassing themselves, posting Kirk Herbstreit's address everywhere. Everything's his fault. Boogeyman hiding under their bed. I mean, they deserved it. No games count, a jet lag. This was a preseason game. Now they're going 11-1. These people are living in a land of delusion in Tallahassee. I don't get it, man. I don't understand.
Are partially, Lou, but at the same time, you got to understand that we deal with these passionate fans every day, don't we? That's what makes this great, and we understand that they're delusional because I tell people this all the time. I unfortunately do it in a nice way, but I basically insult my viewers every day by telling them they really don't know what they're talking about, most of them, and that they're delusional and they're biased. Just admit it. You're biased. You're delusional. That's fine. You're a fanatic. And that's what makes this great. And that's what college football is. First and foremost, it's about passion. But when you get snubbed at 13-0, regardless of any objective analysis that says you were not one of the 4 best teams, but they did earn it. So you're going to be pissed off about that for an off season. Now going to the
conspiracy theories is where they lose everybody. Blame, this idea that Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, is just secretly doing what ESPN tells him to do in order to benefit the SEC. Like this is what they believe. Or Boo Carter last year at NC State, that they don't really vote. There is no vote.
Yes,
it's a sham.
I know.
They don't even know who's on the playoff committee. They literally think it's ESPN is the play. Like they don't even know. And then when you tell them, it's like, well, you know, even Ward Manuel and Boo Carter will do anything for money. These people are insane.
Well,
to think that.
you were not wrong. My point, Lou, is that they have just been given circumstances to show their insanity, unlike other college fan bases that would be doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, I'm still happy they lost. Forget the team. I'm happy the fans lost. The Florida State fans. They deserved it. They deserved to lose. Reality is they just can't beat the state of Georgia. Georgia's just better than Florida. Just full stop.
Yeah, Georgia Tech over Miami. They got a 2-game winning streak there. Yeah.
Has Georgia Tech really beat Florida State 3 out of the last 4 times? Holy moly.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech hasn't beat Georgia 3 times this century. And they play every year. And Florida State's lost 3 or 4 to Georgia Tech. Wow. Unbelievable. I don't even know what to say. It's crazy. Montana State game was good.
Lou, if you were like me, you were trying to figure out, because we've got all these numbers that tell us that top 10 teams, preseason top 10 teams, are going to plummet out of the poll. And it's like a head scratcher to figure out who's that going to be. Well, we found out today who most likely is going to be one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who?
I heard you say NC State. Who do you have them beating in the ACC championship?
Oh, you did have to bring that up, didn't you?
Oh, was it Florida State?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I've got Miami and Virginia Tech in a rematch.
Okay. Miami was the team, and I'm guessing you were hitting the same issue that I was saying. They got the best 2 deep in the conference. They got the best quarterback, I think, in the conference. They should win it, but I just have no trust in Mario Cristobal. So I had him at 9-3.
Yeah. And it's always hard to do these kind of prediction things, but the way the scheduling is now, it's impossible. I mean, you used to just basically, all right, who are the 2 best teams, or who's the best team in this division and that division, but that matters less.
Yeah.
Like I don't think Virginia Tech's necessarily the 2nd best team in the ACC, but that's not all that matters anymore. Like they don't, I mean, even SMU, now they're not going to make the ACC championship game, but they play Florida State and Louisville, but they don't play the next 4.
Yeah.
They don't play NC State, Clemson, Miami, or Virginia Tech.
Yeah. As you well know, the larger these conferences have become, the more opponents you don't play in your conference, the more we have to scrutinize these schedules, because the more disparate they are and different they are. So Rutgers doesn't, not that they're going to be a factor in the Big Ten, but they don't play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, Oregon. They don't play the probable 5 best teams in the conference.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be wild. I don't know what the playoff committee will do when it comes down to that, because I don't know. I don't want it to get to the point where records, it just seems like, forget the Florida State thing for a second, because it is what it is. But I mean, like no other league does that anywhere. Like NFL, okay, who cares if the 11th best team in the NFC is better than the 8th best team in the AFC? It doesn't matter. And no one talks about it or cries about it when the 11th best team in the NFC doesn't make the playoffs, but the 8th best team in the AFC does. Like, it's your record. Like, that's got to matter some, doesn't it?
So when you look at these 12 teams that are going to be selected, you think that record should win out over anything else? Is that what you're saying?
Not over anything else, but like some people are totally against automatic bids. Well, I mean, why?
I think in most things that there's good to have 2 sound philosophies that have tension between each other. And in this case, it's winning a conference respecting the conferences, giving them value to say, regardless of what your record is, if you lose all your non-conference games and you struggle to some kind of 6-3 record, make your conference championship game and win and have some ugly record, but we are honoring conferences because that's why we have them, but also having the tension of, well, we have this at-large component. Therefore, we've got this committee. Hopefully they're doing their job correctly. They're going to select the best teams in the country that didn't win a conference. And you have those two things working together.
Yeah, like I like that. I think what we have, what they're trying to do now is like merging the best of both worlds. Because like last year, you got Florida State 13-0 wins the ACC. They don't get in, and it's like, well, that's not fair. And then other people say, well, but they weren't one of the best 4 teams according to this room full of people. So what do? Well, you put half in automatically and you let the room full of people pick the other half. Like, I'm okay with that. But there's a lot of people that don't want a 13-0 Florida State guaranteed to get in. I don't know why. Like it's like, well, you know how, people just like to complain. Like there's people that already have their posts on Facebook ready to hit send for next year's Super Bowl halftime show about how much they hate it. Like they're just gonna hate it just to hate it. And I get that there's some people that are like that, but like doing it some one way and some the other, like it seems to me that solves both sets of problems. Like your Florida State last year or whoever this year that somebody says, well, they're not one of the best teams. Okay, that's fine. They're still going to get in because they won their conference, and then this room full of people can put the other teams in.
Yep.
Like, I'm okay with that. It's not going to be perfect because you're still going to have somebody arguing about who's 13 or 12 but like I hear like Josh Pate's the worst. He's like, well, the third best team in the SEC is better than the winner of the ACC. So why should the winner of the ACC get a bye? Well, at some point you've got to divide these teams up into some forms of groups with a clear understanding of what they need to do within that group to get to the postseason. If they're not good enough to be there, then they'll lose.
Yeah. I don't want this to be completely subjective where we're giving the complete autonomy and authority of a sport to 13 people in a room like we have for the last 10 years. And it's turned out fairly well. I have a few issues here and there, but fairly well. And most of those decisions were easy to make. It's not like they had some quandary every year to deal with. It was usually pretty clear cut. But yeah, I don't want to give up the entire sport and say, well, you tell us who the top 12 teams are in the country, and if you leave out the ACC, fine. No.
I don't want that either. I'm all for seeing how it goes for a couple of years, and I think, and we've talked about this before, I know, but like one of the things that separates college football from everything else is the subjectivity involved. Like, and it can be frustrating at times. But that's part of what is the draw of college football, I think, is sort of the never-ending argument and debates. I mean, you got people arguing about who's the real national champion in 1941 and 1942 still today.
Yeah, I enjoy
like that. That's part of it. And it frustrates people when they're sort of on the outside of that looking in, like Florida State last year. But as a whole, like as a college football population, like that's part of the fun of college football. But I do think there should be a way, a team should know when they start the season, if we check everything off on this on these boxes, we're going to get in, whatever that is, winning your conference, whatever. So I'm okay with the way they have it set up now, and we'll see how it goes.
And to your earlier point, there's going to be guys like you and I that are going to look at the final 12 and say, well, which is really the best 11 and then team number 35. But
right.
We're going to look at, because that's what we do. We're going to look at, LSU got left out, Oklahoma got left out, Michigan got left out, whatever. And we're going to try to compare them. And we may have an argument and say, we think really they should have been number 12 or whatever. But at the same time, those teams are not going to have a gripe. If you couldn't get into this field, you had every opportunity, win your conference, But the thing that I had an issue with before, and it never happened, but I would have loved to have seen all 5 conference champions go undefeated, because the question I would spring on people I would say, what can a team do to guarantee that they will make the playoffs? And everyone say they go undefeated. No,
Right.
because they could all go undefeated, and we didn't even foresee the Florida State situation. But at least we have a clear path that you can guarantee your playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I don't care about the people that say, well, the 5th best team in the SEC is better than the 2nd best team in the ACC. So why should that team get in and not the 5th best? You're the 5th best in your league. What are you crying about? You win more games. I mean, I just don't like that. No one else does that. And I don't think that should have anything to do with the discussion. I mean, every year in the NFL, one conference is better than the other. They still put the same number of teams from each conference into the playoff. And I'm not saying they should do that exactly in college football, but the point I'm making is it doesn't matter if Oklahoma finishes 5th in the SEC and a handful of people go, well, Oklahoma would beat the 2nd best team in the ACC. Well, they're not in the ACC. I'm sure the ACC would take them if they want to go, but you're not in the ACC. You're in the SEC. Stop finishing 5th.
And we're going to hear this year in a number of ways. But what could be funny is to see this Saturday, Florida beat Miami and then go on to like a 5-7 season and see Miami win the ACC and let's say go 11-1 and Florida to have that win over Miami.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be wild. Yeah. Aren't you so happy we finally made it?
Yeah. I just, after about 3 plays at that Florida State game, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. I love it. Except Florida State took it down the field, and I thought, man, am I an idiot for taking Georgia Tech in the points? I must have really screwed this up, because I saw all these predictions from at least people that watch me, Florida State 41-10 and 35-7, and I thought, I must have screwed this one up, but no.
Yeah, I took Georgia Tech in the points. I didn't have the stones to pick them to win outright, but I did take Georgia Tech in the points.
Yeah, I thought about it. I think I said I'd give them a 30 or 35% shot.
Yeah. And hey, at least for the next 3 or 4 months, we don't have to sit around for hours a day trying to figure out what are we going to make a video about today. We got plenty of material for the next 3 or 4 months.
Absolutely. It'll be fun.
All right, Mark. Happy National College Football Day, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate you stopping by to say hi, and we will see you on Wednesday.
I'll be there.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right. Bye.
The incomparable Uncle Lou. And as I mentioned there at the end, Lou's coming by on Wednesday. We're going live at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Going to bring in some Clemson folks. Of course, we got Georgia Clemson. I hope that's going to be a good game. I have my doubts, but maybe Clemson's defense can keep them in it. Again, big blowout show, preview, Georgia Clemson, 9 p.m. Eastern time Wednesday with Uncle Lou and company. Jackson, thank you so much for your patience, sir. Just wanted to get to Uncle Lou right there, but thanks for having your mug standing by. And Jackson, before I forget, because I don't want to let this slip, we've got Jackson he's going double fisted there on the mugs from the Voice of College Football, everyone. So this guy is a walking billboard for the Voice of College Football. And when it comes to social media posts for us, he's phenomenal. But starting on Monday, we can't announce this, right, Jackson?
Absolutely. Okay. If you want to.
6 Eastern, 5 Central, Alabama Live. We've got an Alabama channel. It's usually me and Stephen M. Smith chopping up some videos, and you see those there. But we will have Jackson hosting a show on the Voice of College Football Alabama Live. That'll be a good time.
Oh, man, it'll be fun. And I'll be hosting with a guy named Johnny Burtz. And for those who don't know, he was on episode 42 of the Jacksonian. So check him out. And I'll tell you right now, you'll get a huge kick out of that episode. And you'll learn quite a lot about my new co-star, Johnny Burtz.
All right. Looking forward to it. Oh, and again, Alabama Live coming up on Monday at 6 Eastern, 5 where it counts there in Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely. It's
All
gonna
right.
be awesome. And also feature from Friday yesterday afternoon on Clemson football at the Boys College Football. Check out the All In show where Uncle Lou was a guest on there. So that was pretty cool. A pretty cool experience.
I forgot about that. Yes, a good guest booking by our guys Jordan and Eddie on the Clemson show. Good call. Yes.
Oh man, I didn't know that was Tiger Paul Craven's name. So next time I see him, I'm gonna have to call him Double D.
Well, look, it's Edward. I don't know if I'm allowed to call him Eddie. I think it's always been Edward. So I don't know about that one. You take that one on at your own peril.
Well, if he's all right with it, I'll just be like, "Hey, Double D." But anyway, week 0 was a crazy day in all of college football. Anytime we see a sloppy slate in all of college football, that means upsets are coming.
I wish we would have seen a second one. I got nothing against SMU, but and I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch the fourth quarter because I saw it until about 8 minutes left. I saw the SMU starting to drive down 2 scores, but I missed them coming back. So was there like a last second, last play kind of deal?
No, that was it was 1 minute left in the game. 1 minute and 9 seconds left in the game. I'd say RJ Maryland caught the game-winning touchdown from Preston Stone.
He's a good player.
And in the fourth quarter, SMU scored 16 unanswered points. So today has just been a day of unanswered points. And especially if some of you in chat saw Montana State, New Mexico, Bronco Mendenhall's first game as New Mexico head coach, where Montana State, I believe, scored 21 unanswered points. I'm going to have to double check that to be sure.
Do you have any idea what the spread was in that game?
11.5. Montana State was the favorite.
So we had 3 double digit. Well, of course, Nevada did not pull it out, but 3 almost. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. SMU was a 27.5 favorite. So it's like if anybody was betting on SMU to beat the spread, well, they were in a bad moon for sure. So
which I believe would have been a bigger upset point wise than any upsets last year. I just ran through them because I counted them up because I was anticipating this Georgia Tech situation, and I counted up 18 double-digit upsets in the Power 5 last year.
Yeah, that's huge.
But none of them were 27.
It's insane. But
yeah, if this is any indication, we're going to have an awesome season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people are even comparing 2024 to 2007. Will we see it be a 2007 2.0? I mean, some people were saying that, but I'm going to wait and see. And I know some people have been saying all day today as to whether Florida State's automatically awful. Let's see how the rest of the season plays out, is my opinion. But for Georgia Tech, I really love what they're bringing out. I feel like that momentum from the Gasparilla Bowl against UCF carried over to Ireland. But I really hope they don't let this game go to their heads against Georgia State next week.
Yeah, that could be a trap for them. It really could. So by the time they get home and all that, it's practically going to be Monday, and they're going to have to turn around and get things together, get their head straight, and go to it against Georgia State. You're absolutely right. And at some point this offseason, we looked at that and thought, okay, regardless of what happens there in Ireland, that's going to be a difficult turnaround preparing for Georgia State, for Georgia Tech. And I do agree with Uncle Lou and others who have said this game today is more about what's going on at Florida State than it is Georgia Tech. But still, it is, let's not discount, that is a nice win for Brent Key and his program against, this will still be a good Florida State team. Now, are they going to win the ACC or even compete heavily for the ACC? That remains to be seen, but they're still a good team.
Well, and also a little stat for Brent Key, which dates back to to his interim season from 2022 is that Georgia Tech is 5-3 against ranked teams in the top 25. So that's a pretty huge stat. And the remaining ranked teams for 2024 are Notre Dame, North Carolina State, Miami on November 9th, and Georgia on Black Friday on ABC.
Don't they also have NC State?
That's what I said. NC
Oh, I'm sorry.
State. It's
Sorry,
okay.
I missed that one. Yeah, I know that their final 5 games are brutal.
Well, I mean, nothing worth having is easy, I always say. But that NC State Georgia Tech game, I'm gonna be plopping down on the couch watching that game, taking notes, just making sure I post like a sicko. But I tell you, I love it. It's awesome. It's a dream
It was
job.
a fun day. It was a fun day, and we'll do it all on Thursday with Minnesota, North Carolina, and Colorado, North Dakota State as the headliners.
Man, I'll tell you one thing, like last year on that 24-hour live stream, I know like it was like you, me, Jeffrey, like we talked about Nebraska having a god-awful culture in football, and then we like suddenly somehow turned it into a discussion about like Me TV, Western, Seinfeld, and Friends. I'm just kind of like, I wonder if this conversation is going to suddenly turn into how we loved 90s Cartoon Network back in the day. It's very interesting to see where the conversation leads to, especially when you're up for 24 hours.
Yeah. We all love football and football talk, but for 24 hours, you're going to maybe delve into a few other things. I think we also brought up the Rifleman.
Yep, we most certainly did. And we talked a little bit about the Big Valley. You don't mess with Nick Barkley. I mean, I don't want to get on his bad side.
No, he's wearing all black. That's the tip off right there. You don't want to mess with anybody wearing all black.
And you certainly don't. And you certainly don't want to mess with Paladin on Have Gun Will Travel, especially that little Derringer that he's got at all times.
It's another one.
Oh yeah, because I mean, when that 6-gun fails, he's got the Derringer out of his pocket. So that's pretty cool right there.
All right, Jackson, I'm going to take these other calls here. I appreciate you being here, man. As always, great work on the social media front today.
Absolutely. And if you love top-notch content in all of college football, go to patreon.com/MarkRogers or become a YouTube member at The Voice of College Football, where you can get all kinds of tremendous tiers, especially the college football bets tier at $99.99 a month. Let me tell you something. If you're a betting man or a betting woman, you're definitely going to want the CFB bets tier of The Voice of College Football.
Jackson, we're going to make that promo read a little bit easier for you. It's just $99. Okay. So you can drop the 99 cents. That'll make it a little bit easier. And then also, Jackson has inspired me. I have posted the merch store link in the chat. Top quality merch. Get it here at the Voice of College Football. There you go.
There we go. Well, happy week 0, Mark, and I'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks, Jackson. Once again, Jackson and Johnny with Alabama Live on Mondays starting this Monday. All right, let's keep it going. We got Hunter on the line. Hunter, what's going on?
How's it going, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. Good day of football for only having basically 2 games.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. I thought that Florida State would do a lot better than what they did today. But I don't think it's all bad. I saw some moments that I thought were, good. I was surprised how bad the defense was. I mean, they just let Georgia Tech run at will and let Haynes King run all over the field.
I've got to say, Hunter, that actually I'm going to slightly disagree in saying that I can't find anything positive about that effort from Florida State. Now, I can't think of a unit on the field, not that there weren't individual players that played well, but I can't think of a unit on the field that played well considering who they were playing. If they would have lost the last second field goal to Tennessee or somebody like that, I would have thought, okay, well, they didn't get the job done, but they played a pretty good game. But against Georgia Tech,
No, I didn't mean like as a unit. I mean, I've seen individual plays that I thought, if there was more consistency, there could be something. They could have something. I thought on one drive that GJ threw the ball down the field, and he made a couple quick passes. I thought, okay, good. They're getting some momentum on their side. And then Georgia Tech just came up with a stop, and it just killed that drive.
Well, I will say we pile on DJ from time to time, and he's not a great quarterback by any stretch, but he did deliver 2 4th and 7, 4th and 8 plays on that final drive when they had to have it, and he had to throw the ball downfield to do it. They weren't extremely difficult throws, but they were over linebackers in front of safety type of throws where he had to find the soft spot in the zone, and he delivered the throws on 4th down with the game on the line.
I will got to give Georgia Tech a lot of credit. That running back they got, that's a good player.
Yeah.
And that corner for them, he was just making plays all day long. I mean, I know that Florida State's missing one of their 5-star wide receivers. He's injured. But I mean, I thought the defense was abysmal from Florida State. I mean, I mean, there's just no way to sugarcoat it. I mean, it was just horrible. Defensive line wasn't great. I thought their pass rush would have been done a little bit better. They had Marvin Jr. from the transfer from Georgia. I thought he'd be a good player, but I don't know. I think that Norvell, though, I think he can turn things around for the better for the rest of the season. I think it may be one of these games where it just has to humble the whole team. And maybe they get their head on straight, going forward.
Yeah, could be. We'll see what they're made of. Either they're going to bounce back from it and understand that the season is not lost, or this will shake their confidence and they'll think, wow, if this is what we are and we were playing this team, then again, confidence is a tricky thing.
Yeah, and losing is a tricky thing. It can be used for positive, or they can take it the other direction and get down on themselves. But I was just a disappointing, game. I didn't bet on the game just for the fact that it's the first game. It's in a different country. I just didn't feel like placing any money on this game, even though going into the game I was pretty confident that Florida State will win. But I give all credit to former Alabama staffer for what he did and bringing that Georgia Tech team. He had them prepared to play, and they weren't all perfect either, but they were clearly the better team of the day.
Yeah, after getting just bludgeoned down the field on the first drive, and I'm sure there were tons of people across the country that thought, okay, yeah, this is going to be ugly.
That's exactly what I thought. I was watching the game at a sports bar and with a friend of mine, and I looked at him. I go, "This is going to get ugly." And then, nope, it just spiraled out of control after that.
I'd be lying if I didn't say it didn't flash through my brain, but I tried to think, okay, Mark, you've been watching this sport for 45 years. Just be in check. It's a long way to go. They still haven't gotten the ball yet. Okay. But the way FSU scored so easily and drove the ball down the field and just ran it down their throats. And with Jordan, like if they were doing that against a competent defense from last year, then you would think, okay, they'll make some adjustments. But this was the worst rush defense in the ACC last year. So after Florida State did that on the first drive, there's no reason not to think, well, yeah, this is what it's going to be all day.
Right. And so, looking ahead to next week, I heard you talk a little bit about it earlier. I'm really interested to see this Georgia and Clemson game. I don't think that people are giving Clemson enough credit. I think that they can hang with Georgia. and I think that they can make this game competitive. Georgia will probably win, but I think Clemson can give them a run for their money.
Well, sure they can, but of course, quarterback play is always key. But I'm going to emphasize it even more in this game. That Cade Klubnik, if he's a mess, and of course he's partially a mess in some of these games because he plays really good defenses. So part of it's his own development and needing to get better. And then when he runs into a capable defense, and he's going to run into the best defense he's going to face on the schedule, that's the recipe for a Georgia rout. If it's Cade Klubnik being a C version of himself, then Georgia's going to win. This is going to be 28-10. But
Right.
if he's a 5-star, he's played well on occasion. He's a good
DJ with a
athlete.
5-star, and look at what he's done.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm just adding that to the resume. That's not necessarily, case closed that you're going to be a great player for sure. But, and then the off-season work with Garrett Riley. Is Garrett Riley as good as we think? And is Dabo giving him the leash to be able to put something together on offense that is going to put defenses on their heels?
I do think that Dabo unwillingness to go into the portal could be the bane of his existence as a head coach.
It could be. It looks like it is.
I think the way that Nick Saban handled it and watching how Kalen DeBoer's handled it, and I'm just speaking to that because that's the team that I follow, the closest, and Mike Norvell does, the similar thing, is you've got to treat the portal as a supplement to what you already have. And I think there's some spots on Clemson's team where, he can use some transfer guys. I don't think you should base your whole roster around, the transfer portal. But, look what Florida State did last year and having that wide receiver that they got from Michigan State and turned out great. There's some pieces you can, bring in. I understand why he doesn't want to do it, and but I understand his stance on that, but I just don't think it's wise. I don't think it's a wise football decision.
Yeah, so this is a huge year for Dabo, and if they can bounce back, let's say win the ACC, go to the playoff, and let's say perform well in the playoff. We're not expecting a national championship run or anything close to it, but look capable against another power conference team in the playoffs. Then that's going to somewhat validate his approach. But let's say they go 8-4. And regardless of what they do in a bowl game that's inconsequential, they go 8-4. And in that conference, 8-4 is more like 6-6 in one of the two big conferences. And it just shows that, okay, Dabo, you're still a really good coach. And you just brought in what is supposed to be one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. And you're still recruiting well, although they're really not recruiting elite. They're still in that 10 to 12 range in recruiting. But this is the way this operates today. Get key components in the transfer portal. I understand that he wants to hang on to this culture of bringing in high school players and developing them. Well, everybody else, aside from Deion Sanders, is still doing that. That's not like you have to give that up. That's still the core of your existence, but you have to supplement it. Most likely, maybe he'll prove us wrong this year, but I love Dabo Swinney. He's my favorite coach, but he's got this wrong.
I love Dabo as a person. I think he's great. I like what he stands for as a person, but former Alabama player, gotta love and respect that. But he gave those years where he was giving Alabama hell. For a few years, and what he did there. So he's a national championship winning coach. So you can't really argue with him. But at the same time, like you just said, it's got to be supplementation. It's not, it can't be, your whole, methodology like Dion's doing, which, in my opinion, that's just going to crumble and burn into the ground. I don't think that, that can sustain itself over the long haul, the way that Dion's, handled his roster management. But that's just my personal opinion.
We'll give an assist here to Uncle Rico, who points out that Clemson is number 5 in the 2024 team talent composite. Now, the issue with this is I don't believe, I might be wrong. Somebody please check me on this one. I don't believe that this includes transfer portal players. That's the problem.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
So it's a great thing that 247 Sports devised here. It's a tremendous tool, except for now it's outdated. So it's got to be revised. So it was great in 2019, but it's not great anymore. It's got to be revised. So they need to get on that. They need me as a consultant, apparently. You got to revise that because it's meaningless. It's 70% correct, generally. But that's
I don't disagree.
It depends on the team.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that order. I mean, all the teams that are listed there, maybe there's a team that's above Clemson now because of the transfer portal. But I mean, the top 4 right there is, I think pretty accurate.
Well, the thing is that you're probably right that the top 4 are accurate because they're acquiring transfer portal talent at roughly the same rate. But then number 5 is acquiring no one. So I got to think that Oregon, whose quarterback is a transfer, and then we could go through the rest of the team. Their best wide receiver is a transfer, and their best running back last season, Bucky Irving, a transfer, that they're better than Clemson from a talent standpoint, including the transfer portal.
Right. No, yeah, you're right. I mean, but you're right. It needs to be updated. The transfers need to be, accounted for in that. But it is what it is. But I think going back to the game, the Georgia game, Clemson, Georgia, Georgia's probably going to win, like I said earlier, and but I'm just hopeful that Dabo can turn it around because I like having him, as a head coach there. I like watching his teams play, and hope that he's around. But it could be the end of the road for him if he doesn't bounce back.
The end of the road?
As a head coach at Clemson, I mean, he'd probably get another job somewhere else. But I don't think I think them fans at Clemson, I don't think they're very happy with, maybe one more year, maybe not this year.
He's
but
got a lot more equity than one more year, unless we're talking about going 6-6 or something like that.
So you think they would be fine with an 8-4 season?
Oh, they're not fine with it, but they're not firing Dabo Swinney.
But
hiring who?
It's a good question, but the way that the culture of college football going, if he's not willing,
I understand that, and I can't speak for the Clemson administration, but I'm just speaking in general. When there's a situation like that, he has built up so much equity. This dude has the best coaching resume of anybody not named Nick Saban in the sport in the last 15 to 20 years.
I understand that. I understand what you're saying, but here's my thinking. If he's not willing to change with the times, what do you do?
That all depends on whether he's unwilling to change with the times and they start going 6-6. But if he's unwilling to change with the times and they continue to rip off 9-3 seasons, then he's going to keep a job. They're not firing Dabo Swinney for going 8-4, 9-3.
Maybe you're right. I mean, maybe I'm just looking at it, wrong.
Because that's what they were doing before they hired him.
Right. Yeah, maybe you're right. I mean, I was just thinking, if he's not willing to change with the times, and they're not making the playoffs, and
Maybe if he was coaching at Ohio State, he'd get fired.
So you think if reverse the logo, and it's Ryan Day at doing the same thing that Dabo's doing at Clemson, you think he'd be gone?
Sure. He'd be gone.
But I'm just glad to have football back. I mean, this is going to be a crazy year. We've already seen one upset. We're going to see probably many more as the year goes on, and it's just an exciting time of the year. It's my favorite time of the year. I'm an Alabama and Florida State fan, but I really like watching the sport as a whole, and seeing all these teams compete, and I don't really like the direction that college football is going in, but I still think it's the greatest sport we got in this country. So, I'm looking forward to another season.
All right, Hunter. Appreciate you being here, man. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, Uncle Rico letting us know here that that team total talent, team composite, whatever they call it, it's a bunch of T's, team total talent composite does include transfers. Well, it should. So I would be shocked, surprised if they would carry this on without it. But it was my understanding from a few other discussions, not just tonight, that that was not taken into consideration. So the next question is, are they taking the original recruiting ranking for that transfer player, or are they taking, I believe they got a revised ranking for all these transfer players? So Dylan Gabriel is a different rating today as a 8th year, 18th year redshirt senior, super senior that he is than what he was obviously signing at UCF. So I think, because I've seen those on the transfer players when that comes down, that they've got a revised ranking for these transfer players. So Uncle Rico, thank you for spending the $1.99 to let me know, and YouTube thanks you as well. So appreciate you being here as always. All right, we got what we could make our last caller. We're at the end of the line here. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
What's going on, Mark? Good to see you. What's good? You can hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, man. Okay. I want to know what's your agent secret, because I've been following you for the second Clemson Alabama rematch, and it just seems like you got younger.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
Man,
yeah, I don't want to admit to you or anybody else how old I am.
Good to see you still on here, man. You a big inspiration to me. Just letting you know, man.
I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. It's good to have you.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you. I just wanted to talk about Florida State, because Uncle Lou did have a point earlier when he was talking about Mike Norvell and his resume when it comes to developing quarterbacks. And I got a homeboy that actually goes to Florida State, and he was hanging around with a couple of the players. I'm not going to say their names, but they kind of like alluded to the fact that DJU wasn't going to be Jordan Travis. And, they like the dude. And my homeboy went to a lot of the spring practices, and he said that, he wasn't really looking that hot then. And I really believe that Missouri and Florida State are the two most overrated teams going into this year, because a lot of people are high on them because of the recency bias. And every year we have like a team that comes out of nowhere, wins double-digit games. You remember Roll the Boat 2019 Minnesota?
Sure.
And, after that season, everybody was thinking, oh, is Minnesota next to take that big step in the Big Ten, challenge Ohio State, Penn State, and then they fell off. And with Florida State last year,
they did go 9-4, JT. They did go 9-4 their next two regular seasons, full seasons, Minnesota.
but it's like they never really took that next jump.
No, not at all. Sure.
But it's like, with FSU last year, that was a historically great team. That was like an all-time great talent-wise Florida State team in terms of what they had in recent memory. And they had like 2 NFL wide receivers and Jordan Travis. And you replace all of that with, some decent replacements. You got Malik Benson, you still got Ja'Kai Douglas, but at quarterback, you severely downgraded with DJU. And you could tell by how their game plan was, they don't really trust the brother like that. They didn't really take too many shots downfield until later in the game. And when they did try to attack the field vertically, it was 2 overthrows to Ja'Kai Douglas. And it doesn't really seem like they got a lot of confidence in DJU. And I want to see Florida State falling off the map this year. I got them at 9-3. But the way they're going to win games is a lot similar to 2017 Miami, because DJU reminds me of Malik Rozier in the sense it's like he ain't trash, but he ain't good neither. But at the same time, he'll make enough plays where he'll keep you in the game. And then if the game's close, you cross your fingers. Maybe he hits 2 big prayers downfield, or he has a drive that he had late in that Georgia Tech game. He drives him downfield, comes up clutch in the 4th quarter. You looking at this man like, oh, shoot. So you feel me? You can do this in clutch time, but you can't do this for the entirety of the game. And defensively, I was really surprised that Florida State's defensive line got manhandled the way they did against Georgia Tech's O-line. I know Georgia Tech returns a good amount of experience on that side, but the D-line really was supposed to be, Florida State's strength this year. Although they did lose Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk, Patrick Turner, Peyton Turner, number 11, he's a beast. I didn't really see him nowhere in this game. And from the way this game played out, you would have thought that Georgia Tech was Florida State. They looked like the teams that had better athlete out there. They had more strength up front, more physicality. And plus, they had that underdog factor. The fact that nobody thought they had a chance to even keep the game close, which shocked me, because I was just looking at DJU like, man, you were struggling at Oregon State and you struggled at Clemson. What makes me think that you're going to all of a sudden be able to turn around just because you got Mike Norvell as your head coach? So I wasn't really surprised by the outcome. As a matter of fact, like, I don't know how you felt about picking Georgia Tech to win outright, but I was really close to doing it. I just didn't have enough guts to do so. But I did expect the game to be close, and I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up winning it. And then another thing, when it comes to the college football playoff argument, I disagree with Uncle Lou's second point, because here's a scenario that I want to throw at you.
Yep.
Let's say Virginia Tech goes 10-2, they beat Miami and they beat Clemson, right? And let's say they win the ACC. Well, let's say they lose the ACC championship to Miami in a rematch or whoever. So let's say they're a 2-loss team and they're ranked high. Would you be willing to put a 10-2 Virginia Tech team over a 9-3 SEC team? Because the problem is that the SEC is the deepest conference in college football. There's about 7-8 teams that are playoff caliber. And with how tough the SEC is in general, they got the most ranked teams in college football. If we're judging this by strength of record, because they always say you may not be what your record says you are. You can be 12-0, but still not be good as a 9-3 SEC team because you faced a weaker schedule. So let's say we got 9-3 Tennessee, 9-3 Ole Miss, and 9-3 Oklahoma. Are we really going to leave out? Let's say Tennessee gets a win against Georgia and they get another big win, right? Are we going to put them over a 1-loss team from the ACC? Let's say Miami goes 11-1, or let's say the Big 12 or whoever has a 1-loss team. You see, I get what people come from, but you can't compare college football to the NFL. They're two different sports, and the NFL has automatic bids, and then they just go by tiebreakers and records. And the committee already didn't get it right last year.
Yeah.
So with 12 teams, now there's more room to make the argument that these SEC teams should be in. Even if we got like a couple of 3-loss Big Ten teams, how would this
I
work
got your
out?
point. Yep. We got it, JT. So you're basically, are we going to take a Big Ten or SEC team that is a worse record with a much better schedule, with better wins and better substantial losses, and elevate them past a lesser team, or what we consider to be a lesser team with a better record out of the ACC? Well, what you're saying there also has to be taken into consideration within even those conferences. So just take your example from the SEC. Oklahoma has a tough schedule. Texas has a fairly lousy schedule, especially by SEC standards. I posted a video about a week ago. It outlines to a T the difference between these two schedules. So yes, I believe that this situation, not that it's a perfect playoff system, but that it's a good one in that it honors the conference championships. Therefore, we're not going to have a situation like we had with Florida State last year. And I don't care if you're the 22nd ranked team in the country, and if pick your team. Let's say Georgia Tech loses to Notre Dame and Georgia, but let's say Georgia Tech has some miracle run in the ACC and they go to the ACC Championship game and they win it. And this system honors the conference championships, but then allows the committee to select the best teams. Now, in terms of your selection of, let's say, Miami going 11-1, but not winning a conference, let's understand that that is basically impossible for that to happen. They're going to be going to a conference championship game if they're 11-1. So they're either going to win the conference or they're going to lose a second game in the conference championship game. But I absolutely believe that the schedule needs to be taken highly into consideration, and that a 9-3 Michigan team, let's say, if they lose to Oregon and Ohio State in extremely close games, let's say they even beat Texas, but they lose another game by a field goal. Yes, that schedule is worth so much more than what we're seeing out of Miami and other teams in the ACC and the Big 12. Utah's schedule is pretty bad. It's horrible.
Do you think that we could soon, because the coach of Utah, Kyle Whittingham, said that it's more realignment on the way. Do you think it'll be like the NFL, AFC, NFC, it just be Big Ten, SEC? Because we're at 12 and we're supposed to expand to 14 in 2 more years. Do you really think that realignment was more so in the benefit of the SEC and the Big Ten's interest versus benefiting college football as a whole?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. 1,000 times over. These conferences, this is the issue with college football and always has been the issue. Number one, this sport started as a true collegiate sport. It had nothing to do with money. There were guys that just played basically intramural football is basically what it was. And then they got better and better and better, and it became popular, and then money corrupts things if it's not utilized the right way, and it got popular. And as soon as money gets involved, then people just want to figure out the best way to get the money. So then TV became involved, and as soon as TV became involved, they started making a ton of money. And so then you're taking an amateur framework that's historically been amateur, and you're pushing professionalism into it with all this money that's being made. And we finally gotten to a point where we're basically quitting the hypocrisy to a certain extent and saying, you know what, it's a semi-professional sport. It's basically a professional sport. We still want to see these guys go to class and represent their university, but they're professionals to a large degree. So that's been one of the big issues in how this sport has evolved, is that the framework is amateur, but the reality is that it's professional. The other issue in this is that the NFL, when you think about what the NFL does, like every other professional sports, but the NFL is the best example. The NFC's East is not making decisions on its own and saying, screw the AFC East. We don't care what's best for them. We are going to do whatever we want, because they all do what's best for all of them. They're all looking out for what's best for the NFL. And that's why they're so successful, so incredibly successful. College conferences, Tony Batiti with the Big Ten, he's not hired by college football. He's hired by the Big Ten to do what's best for the Big Ten, which means make us the most money, give us the most authority, the most autonomy, increase our brand image, do everything that you can. And most of the time, that's to the detriment of the other conferences. The same with Greg Sankey of the SEC. And Brett Yormark would do it with the Big 12, but he just doesn't have the brands to do it. So, yes, the sport conflicts itself by the way it's structured. There should be a commissioner. There should be a governing body that oversees the entire sport, and therefore decisions could be made for the best of the sport, not the individual conferences just doing whatever they want that's best for them.
And I got one more question for you. So what if, I'm a big Coach Prime fan. What if it works? What if they end up winning the Big 12? They make it to the playoffs. Will we see a domino effect, copycat league, where everybody will see, okay, Deion just won the conference championship, overhauling his roster straight through the portal, only got a couple of big name recruits. What we see pretty much the rest of the new coaches in college football adopt this philosophy, or will coaches be like, you know, what Deion did is only because, you know, he's an untraditional head coach. Nobody will pull that off.
Your second point should be the one that people should be considering, because I think any other coach would be foolish to think that they're Deion Sanders. So for all the things that Deion Sanders does that there's a lot of stuff that he does that I think is good for the young men that he coaches. A lot of good that he puts out there. There's some other things that he does that I think are a bit silly. I think he gets offended too much by the media. But he's the only Deion Sanders in college football. Think about Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Urban Meyer in the past. All those guys became huge names in college football because of college football. Deion Sanders was a brand before he entered college football. He's a celebrity based on being a great NFL player, based on being a TV celebrity and a spokesman for Aflac and other places. He's a brand unto himself. So nobody else is going to be able to duplicate. Whether it's successful, we'll just have to wait and see. I have my doubts that it's going to be successful, but if it's going to be successful, it's going to be because of Deion Sanders and not that because anyone else could duplicate that.
I appreciate you taking my call, Mark. I got one more question, but I'm going to answer it. I'm going to ask it and then get up off here. How you feeling about Lincoln Riley, man? Do you think it's over for him? The ceiling's about to fall, or do you think D'Anton Lynn's going to work his magic? I appreciate you, Mark, man. Keep up the great content.
Thanks, JT Sports. Appreciate you stopping by, man. You have a good night. All right, Lincoln Riley. There's nothing wrong with Lincoln Riley. He knows how to manage a football program. He knows how to manage a football team. He certainly knows how to run an offense and develop quarterbacks and call plays. So Lincoln Riley was a big boy at Oklahoma who led a huge program and did it successfully. No, they didn't quite have the talent or the trench play to stand up against the LSUs and the Alabamas in the playoffs. However, they did play a great game, of course, against Georgia in 2017. So Lincoln Riley's an exceptionally good coach, and he's fine. Is he perfect? Does he have any blind spots? Yes. Well, he apparently had one with Alex Grinch and allowing him to be the defensive coordinator. First, bringing him from Oklahoma was a mistake, and then retaining him as long as he did, a mistake that has pulled back and cost his program. But Lincoln Riley's an exceptional coach. He now has made, with the help of the athletic director, an excellent hire in D'Anton Lynn. And USC football, I've said this many times, and it's been proven throughout history. Now, whether Lincoln Riley is going to be able to repeat this against a extremely difficult league, remains to be seen. However, when USC is right, Ohio State is the most consistent elite program in the history of this sport, and certainly in the history of modern times, meaning post 1970 or going back to, let's say, post 1950. But the best teams in college football, yes, they've been at Nebraska, they've been at Miami, they've been at Alabama. But when they peak in terms of NFL talent playing at a ridiculous level, and I'm talking about great NFL talent, not just NFL players, transcendent NFL players playing in a collection consistently at different times. John McKay, John Robinson, Pete Carroll, those USC teams at their best are extremely difficult to match. So I believe that at its peak, that USC has had the greatest football program in the history of college football. But we can't discount all the down periods. When you throw those in, they're not the greatest program of all time. But at their peak, I believe that USC has been the greatest program in the history of college football. But again, that's just been a spot in the 60s, a spot in the 70s, a spot, in the 2000s. So if Lincoln Riley can duplicate that and take advantage of location, recruiting, and the NIL is catching up, we understand, then USC has a chance to be dominant once again. Adam, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate it. Mark, would you support a 2014 playoff? Does this give you an idea as a more effective method by which to determine the best team? So we are at a place where I think the 12 team, and if it got to 14 or 16, I don't think would diminish this much, is a good place to be in regards to balancing the relevance, the importance of the regular season, and the playoffs. College basketball is screwed right now. When I was growing up, when I loved college basketball, college basketball games in the regular season were huge. Syracuse, Georgetown, Syracuse, St. John's. Throughout the Big Ten, the SEC. Yes, college basketball was phenomenal. But obviously, the best players cycled to the NBA, and that was the biggest downfall of college basketball. And then besides that, of course, the tournament has taken over. So it's a 3-week sport for most of America. College football has been a regular season sport that has been like one postseason game for everyone. You tune in on New Year's Day to see the team that you loved watching for the 3 months in September, October, and November. So I think college football, despite all the upheaval and the things we don't like about transfer portal and NIL, has found a sweet spot between regular season importance and playoff importance, because the regular season is still extremely important, but it's not cataclysmic to a team losing a game. Of course, you can lose 2. You probably can't lose 3 if you play in one of the 2 biggest conferences. So we still have this extremely important regular season. It's not the NFL. Go 10-7, you'll be fine. Go to the playoffs. No, you still have to be excellent in the regular season. But now we've got this expanded playoff. So now we've got, instead of 6 or 7 fan bases excited about making a 4-team playoff, we've got legitimately, with the ACC as wide open as it is and the Big 12, we've got like 25 programs and their fan bases excited about having a legitimate shot of making the college football playoff. And actually, while it can be argued, and it is going to happen, whether it happens this year or happens next season, we are going to see a regular season college football game that is kind of meaningless. And it's going to be, we see them all the time because we see Indiana play Purdue and those kind of games. But I'm talking about good teams playing where it's meaningless because they're so good that they're 10-0 versus 9-1, 10-0 versus that type of game. And we've played out the scenarios all off season, the Ohio State, Michigan kind of games at the end of the year where, wow. So there is a downside to this, but it's very infrequent versus the number of games that are now given importance. When USC and Penn State are playing, I don't know when they're playing, but it's fairly late in the season, and they're both 6-2, 7-1. Well, in the previous iteration of the college football playoff, they're pretty much done. This is a nice game. I want to watch it, but these teams aren't going to the playoff. Well, now this becomes a super important game. So I would argue, and have for a long, long time, ever since we've talked about expanding the playoff, that it is making more games important than the number of games that it's taking down and making less or non-important. Now, to your point, 24 teams. Okay. I think it's also important to have a setup that people can digest and understand. I don't think that the average college football fan can really digest 24 teams. I know it happens in basketball 3 times as much, 68. But obviously, they're playing at the same time. You tune in on Thursday at noon Eastern time, and the tournament starts, and there's 4 games going on. And it's just, that's the mode, that's the approach, that's the setup that we've all been accustomed to with college basketball. But college football, first of all, we don't want 2 games going on at the same time. None of us want that. 2 playoff. No, football is an attention sport. 1 game, big game. We watch 1 game in the postseason. Not, okay, there's 4 different tournament sites, and no. And just the 24 teams, we would then be talking about. See, I don't even think that justifies allowing 2 group of 5s into the playoff. It doesn't. Shoot, many times the best group of 5 shouldn't even be in a 24-team playoff most of the time. So they would still only get 1 spot. So you're getting 23 teams from the Power 4. Oh, my goodness. You're talking about going 6 to 7 deep in the Big Ten and the SEC. No, you're going to devalue the regular season too much. I don't want to see 7-5 teams. And that doesn't get to 7-5. That gets to 8-4 for sure. But then there are going to be 7-5 teams with really tough schedules that we're going to say they should be in the playoff. No. For that reason. Plus, we're not playing video games. If we were playing video games with not flesh and blood that can get injured, we would have to greatly reduce the regular season to set up this 24-team tournament. And that's where all this expansion starts to run into a wall, is that we are dealing with human beings that get hurt. And if we expand this season anymore, and we may even see it now, if Penn State's the 7 seed in the playoffs and they've got to win 4 playoff games, I don't know that we're not going to see at some point, I don't think it's going to be common, but a player looking at that thinking, whew, I just lost the conference championship game. We just played a 13th game. I got to play 4 more. And I don't have a whole lot of confidence that we can win 4 games to win a national championship. I'm getting ready for the NFL draft. That's going to be sad when that happens. It was sad when it first happened to bowl games that have nothing to do with the championship. The Liberty Bowl, the Citrus Bowl. That was sad for me. I didn't want to see players sitting out bowl games. But to sit out a playoff game, yeah, I just, plus, if a team is the 24th, and I understand you're trying to get to determine the best team. The best team doesn't always win the championship. Let's understand that too. But obviously, wow, they would have to go through a gauntlet. But there's only one champion. And regardless of what format you have, there's still only going to be one champion. So, in a sense, it would be fun. Sure. But man, I got to think that the Alabamas and Georgias of the world don't want to mess with that. They're always going to be in the playoff. Huh. But yeah, diving 7 deep in the SEC in the big, what would that be? Let's say Notre Dame makes it. Let's say you get a group of 5. So you get those 2 out of the way, and then you've got the 2 conference champions from the ACC and the Big 12. So we got 20 other spots. How do we think that those would be divided? Well, with a Big 10 champ and an SEC champ. So 18 other spots. I got to think that would go 7-7 Big 10 SEC and 2-2 Big 12 ACC in the typical season. So what are we looking at? 8 teams from the Big 10. If you finish 8th place in the Big 10 or the SEC, you were going to the playoff. That's a 7-5 football team. Yeah, I don't. Adam, jump on here at some point. Not tonight. And if I'm missing anything or missing any great points, and you're always well thought out on your concepts there, so there's probably some gem in this other than just more football. But yeah, what would that? And there would be no buys. Yes, there would have to be a buy. Okay, there would be buys because 4, 8, 16, 32, no buys. So there are buys. So then you get into this whole tricky situation of extending buys to teams that did not win a conference. And that would be a pretty big deal because those teams would be getting ushered into the second round. So that would be somewhat controversial. We've reached a place where actually I think most of us can agree that even though the 4 best teams in the country will not be receiving buys, at least they earned it as conference champions. And there's a clear distinction between these are the teams that get the buys, these are the teams that don't get the buys, as opposed to having some committee tell us, well, Alabama's the 7th best team in the country, they get a buy, or whatever it would be. If you would play with 16, I guess you would have, how does that work? No, you would want to pare it down to 16 to play the next round. Okay, it's a little too much bracket concept for me to, but that's how you would do it, right? You would want to get it down to 16 for the second round to then go 16, 8, 4, 2. Okay, so I don't know how many buys there are going to be. 8? Is it 8? If you get 8 buys, then you've got the other 16 play. Yeah, you get 8 buys. The other 16 play to knock that side down to 8. So you have the 8 that survived the first round, play the 8 buys. You got your 16-team tournament. 8 buys. Yeah, don't like that either. Don't like that either. But Adam, thanks for the thought. It's always a good one out of you. Appreciate everyone being here at the Voice of College Football. Big week coming up. Monday, we add the Alabama Live show, 6 Eastern. And then at a time to be announced, Brian Driscoll, Irish Breakdown, and myself every week, Notre Dame Live. That's going to be a heck of a show. Every week, Notre Dame Breakdown with Brian Driscoll and myself on Notre Dame football. So we've got a Notre Dame live show now and an Alabama live show. Uncle Lou and a Clemson contingent on Thursday night to talk Clemson, Georgia. That'll be a heck of a show. And all the other shows that we do here at the Voice of College Football. And hey, we had like 2:30 in here tonight. Where are you on Monday morning? Join me on Monday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then in addition to this, the more I roll out this programming update, the more insane I think I am that I'm going live every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time with you. Every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. For you who don't like to stay up late with us on Saturday night, you can join me at 11 a.m. Eastern time and give me a call on Sunday morning to wrap up the weekend. All right. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you next time for the College Football After Dark show tomorrow night. You'll see me next, unless something happens that I want to spit out. Most likely Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, right here at the Voice of College Football. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.